Hi, my name is Lance Watkins, and I'm a sales manager here at Global Finishing Solutions, and I want to welcome you to our efficiency panel. I'm honored and excited to have two great partners in the industry, Mike Anderson, President Owner of Collision Advice, and Daryll O'Keefe, Senior Executive Vice President, Canada for the Fixed Network. Mike, could you just go ahead and give us a little background about yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today. So, Collision Advice, we are a full-service coaching, consulting, and training company, and we do training for many OEMs here in the United States. We do the estimate training for Toyota, Lexus, Nissan, Infiniti, Porsche. We work with other OEMs as well, and then we also go into shops and, like you said, help them improve their efficiencies, whether it's with accounting or file handling or processing of vehicles, whatever the case may be. And again, thank you so much for having us here today. I'm also a former shop owner.
Thank you, Mike. Daryll?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name's Daryll O'Keefe. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Fixed Network in Canada. So my core responsibilities are, franchising. So 575 collision centers operate under our two banners, Pro Color Collision and Fix Auto in Canada. And then we also operate Speedy Auto Service and Novus Glass in Canada. Now the Fixed Network itself is global. We're in 20 countries. We have 800 and some collision shops in the space. So Pro Color you'll hear about in the United States growing over the next few years as well.
All right, thank you. Over the years, I've learned so much from both of you about the industry as a whole. Trust me, 10, 15 years ago, I didn't know what length of rental meant. But attending your seminars and attending your trainings, I've been able to, really understand the pain points in the industry, how we can be better. So having you two on our efficiency panel, I thought was just a no-brainer. So, speaking of efficiency, length of rental, customer satisfaction, efficiency is kind of the game now in the marketplace, right, is what I'm understanding in all the podcasts and everything I listen to. Can you talk about what shops are doing to improve process and efficiency? Daryll, we'll start with you.
Sure. It's truly an open-ended question. There's a lot of ways we can go down that. I'll tell you one thing that I see for sure when we talk about efficiency, it's around using what we have today. We all know when you go, and you've been a part of a lot of development with us, finding a new space to do collision repair, it's a difficult scenario. Not everybody wants the collision repair shop in their backyard. So in looking to do more with the space we have, that's where efficiency plays into for me specifically. And really, when you think about the needs of the car, I talk a lot, Lance, this year about the shop of the future and what our perception is. And I think it's a lot about, addressing the needs of the customer holistically. And it's not just collision anymore. Think about the common fact of ADAS calibrations. It touches glass repair, it touches mechanical service, and it touches collision. So if a shop is going to invest and be able to handle that, it makes a lot of sense to be able to take advantage of those three segments as well. So the efficiency is not only doing more with less, but it's actually being more efficient with the car and the time the car's in a shop. The more we can do in the repair cycle without moving it to a third party for a supplement, I think there's a lot of benefits there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mike, could I get your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I got to tell you, my perspective of the collision repair industry has changed quite a bit in the last 2 years. I believe that our industry has become more almost like the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt, right? About how they were, buying runs, right? And I really think that when you look at today with the talent pool, lack of talent, recruitment and retention of technicians, I think we have to be able to figure out how do we get the maximum that we can, but obviously without adding stress to them or compromising quality of repairs or safety or anything like that. So one of the things we've really been looking at Collision Advice with the shops that we work with in the last couple of years is average sales per collision tech. So say 2 to 3 years ago in the US, we saw that for every human being in the body department, right? Let's say you had 3 body techs, you had 2 apprentices, that's 5 human beings. Shop was doing $250,000 a month in sales. They were producing about $50,000 a month in average sales per human being in the body department. So say 3 years ago, we were seeing that number in the US probably right around $56,000 to $63,000. And now we're seeing some shops that have really focused on that, obviously using some of your technology, right? And what we're doing is we're seeing that number now where the average is closer to $80,000 to $90,000, and we're even seeing some shops achieve even as much as $123,000 a month in sales, per person in the body department. So I think the metrics we're measuring have changed, but it absolutely is a focus. I would also say here in the U.S., we're seeing right now that especially with like the hurricanes that happened in Florida and North Carolina, that there are some government agencies that feel like maybe some of the insurers are underinsuring the escrow fund. If they actually pass some laws that want the insurers to put more money in escrow, that's going to actually negatively impact the revenue stream for the insurers. And I think you're going to see cycle time for DRP shops. Cycle time is going to be like the number one KPI to focus on next year, or what you referred to as length of rental.
So speaking of revenue per tech, what's the target? What's your target that you're shooting for with the shops that you work with?
So again, it depends on if they're doing high-end luxury vehicles, like if they're doing Rivians or Mercedes, where they have a higher labor rate, right? But I would say today we want a shop to be between $73,000 to $83,000 a month in gross revenue per person in the collision department. And again, that's an average. I see some more, some less.
Sure. You know, speaking of new technology, and I know we've worked very close together on, you know, your training centers and the shops that we're doing for you, and as also your Spartan members. What's some of the new technology that you've seen, you know, coming into the industry that is helping with the efficiency? Daryll?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's obviously, you know, the world talks about AI significantly, but that's a little bit, to me, a little bit ahead of what today is, right? So that's what we need to be appreciating and where it's going to fold into our business. But today there's available new technology that I think is really, really important. We look at products like your booth. So Booth Connect. Booth Connect speaks to me because it allows us to develop lead indicators of the performance of our shops. The last thing we want to do is have a huge piece of capital equipment fail or run inefficiently. So if we have data points that are telling us what's going on in the piece of equipment, and this translates, we're doing a large project in Canada right now where we're tying sensors, low distance frequency stuff, so it's not Bluetooth, it's a different version of Wi-Fi, but we've got a sensor on every piece of equipment in some of our shops. It's measuring the capacity loads going into compressors, into the spray booths. So the idea being is that we're going to maximize the efficiency of when we maintain these things to ensure they run at optimal efficiency, that we don't have breakdowns, that we see increased load on motors before that causes a problem. So that type of technology that gives us a lead indication, and that's why I mentioned your Booth Connect, because I see that being a key part, to have those metrics in advance of a failure being very important.
Yeah, all great points. Mike, what have you seen for your shops? What are they utilizing to get more efficient?
So I will tell you, they're using data, a lot of data points, right? And I think that's where, you know, your software Booth Connect is just actually ahead of its time. You know, one of the things I want to say to people too is oftentimes in our industry, when software comes out, we focus on what it won't do. And I think we have to change our perspective on that. And we have to know that when a software program rolls out, that today is the worst it will ever be. It only gets better from here. And as people start to embrace Booth Connect, that's when you can start adding features that can be beneficial to their business. I also believe that, again, much like what Daryll was saying, is that, you know, one of the things that's a big trend in Europe right now is ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And I think we're starting to see some of that come to the U.S. So when you're running two booths, when maybe you could accomplish the same thing with one booth, you know, that could contribute to ESG, which I think some people might be measuring in the future. So I think right now it's data analytics. Like one of the things we saw was that if a technician was only producing, say, $60,000 a month in gross revenue in the body department, first thing we looked at was estimate quality. After there, we went and we looked at administrative bottlenecks. What's your average sales per admin? From there, and we had a checklist, right? I actually saw something from the McKinsey, right, which is a consulting company that provides a lot of analytics and just overviews on different industries. And they said that if you can focus on utilizing data, again, Booth Connect, that you will see a minimum of a 22% output increase, right? And they used this statement that said talent plus productivity equals value. And I think we've got the talent. We're always talking about how there's a technician shortage, but really I think, and I would love to hear what you think, are we maximizing that talent to the best of its ability?
Sure. Where do you see, we work a lot with you guys on different aspects, you know, where do you see, you know, our Revo coming in to play as far as efficiency and quality goes? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I think as we start to see electric vehicles, a lot of people are not aware of this, but electric vehicles absolutely have restrictions in regards to the maximum temperature and maximum bake time. And I think a lot of shops, unfortunately, are not following and researching those procedures. And what I love about the Revo is it allows me to control the heat, and actually, which is really, really critical, right? So number one, I think, is with EV, it's going to become more relevant. Number two, I see a lot of people that embrace UV primers and then the UV light. But you know, that can be expensive for some shops. To me, the Revo is an alternative, right? That is an economical and affordable alternative. I also believe that we've gained so many efficiency gains in the refinish department that really the body shop is where, or the collision department is where we're looking to gain efficiencies. And I think even when I look at like, curing body filler and things of that without sacrificing, shrinking and pinholes and things like that, the Revo is just a great, great asset for that.
Yeah. Daryll, how are your shops up in Canada utilizing it?
So I agree with a lot of Mike just said here, especially when you think about if you're going to use infrared. And the thing I like about Revo is it's specific. Now, it was built and designed for the purposes that we have. It's calibrated for, didn't come from a greenhouse industry, it didn't come from other industries, and was recalibrated. It was actually built and designed for this. So it's customizable to the specific coatings you're doing, so we don't have to suffer, the over curing or the under curing. We can be very, very good. So when we're using it in body filler and everything, it makes sense that you're using it. If you're going to use it from at the end, you need to use it at the beginning because you want to start trapping solvent. I came from a paint background, so solvent is the enemy to me. We have to make sure we manage solvent all the way through. You can't just manage it at the end because it's too late. But when it comes down to the usage and the efficiency, what I love about the systems is the customizable aspect. So with the systems that we put into, say, the Milton Training Center. So we've got 2 booths, identical side by side. They're side load. One has the cartridge system in it. One has the arch. So we can replicate literally any scenario for any shop there and build the processes appropriately. If we have a shop that only has the room for 1 booth, they can spray primer in it. They can use the UV curing on the cartridges to take care of that. Then we move it out of that booth on a side load. We do the refinishing outside the booth. Then we can move it back in and utilize that. And then if we have a multi-stage one, well, we turn that cartridge system into sort of the primer department because it's for the spots. But then when you're going to refinish the side of the car, we can move it over and use the arch because we can run it. I think we can do half the car, correct me if I'm wrong, at a 6-minute run.
Yep.
So we can run it, we don't heat it up, so we can do a Tesla or a Lightning, and in 6 minutes, the vehicle's not even hot, so we don't even have the core temperature of the vehicle heated up. So another thing that's nice, one, it doesn't compromise the batteries, but 2, it cools down quicker, and that can come back out and get into reassembly immediately, as opposed to, we know if you're wrapping up to 180 degrees, it takes the entire vehicle a long time to cool down, and you can fingerprint that clear for a long time. This doesn't happen.
And we've been doing a lot of research ourselves. Are they starting to come out with repair procedures for electric vehicles? Do you have to remove the battery? Do you not remove the battery? If you both could kind of hit on that, because there are some misleading statements out in the market.
Yeah, so as you know, we I think it was 2 years ago, we actually did a joint presentation here at your booth at SEMA. And so I think it really depends on the electric vehicle manufacturer. I know I was speaking to Jake Rodenroth and Andy McDonald at Lucid. They don't have any precautions. But if you look at like a Nissan Aria, they have precautions. GM Volt does, right? So I think it's really important that people understand there's not a one-size-shoe-fits-all or a blanket that says every EV or hybrid this is applicable. It varies, and that's why you got to research every single vehicle. But with that said, what I also like about the Revo is, again, is we see more and more shops wanting to paint parts off the vehicle, right? I think that the Revo, and then we look at the price of what it costs to bake a vehicle. I mean, if you're measuring gas and therms, the price of that's gone up. I think actually, from my viewpoint, if you're using like the Revo and that technology, or like you said, whether it's the arch or whatever the case may be, I think you're actually going to see an ROI, return on investment on that, with actually lower costs on what it takes to produce that vehicle, through the bake cycle.
Yeah, no, I agree. One thing that we probably don't talk about enough with the Revo, and I know you both are very experienced in it, everybody wants to talk about speed, and efficiency, right? I think quality is also a big thing. You're going to know when you deliver that car if you've had a bad, body job, paint job, because we're curing it all the way through. And I think shops, if they don't have to redo the work, that helps them become more efficient, right? If they're not redoing it.
Well, I think too, as I said, we're painting more and more parts off of the vehicle. And you often hear a lot of shops that say, well, I don't want to paint that door off the vehicle because my technician might scratch it or paint soft or whatever. I think that using your technology, again, it's a more cure, right? A better cure. And so I think you're going to kind of remove some of those excuses that people have that the technician's going to damage after the fact.
Yeah, I agree. Anything you want to add, Daryll?
That was what my point was earlier when I talked about the specificity of the product, the Revo, and how it was calibrated specifically for what we do. It's a quick ramp up in temperature, but it's the right temperature and it's the right waves of frequency to properly penetrate the surface. So when it's done in the least amount of time of the IRs I've seen in the marketplace over my 30-some years doing this. And again, once it's cool, it's cool if, heaven forbid, there is a problem, you have to fix it because runs do happen, things do happen. It can be done right away and put back in there because you're not. A thorough cure still takes more time, but because it's so cured and we're not putting an aggressive amount of heat on it, we can infrared it and still deliver it. So it's you got to plan for mistakes too. It's like golf, right? You got to play the mistakes as much as the good shots.
I think that's a great point. We can fix the problem same day and not have to wait for it. Now, the shops that you work with, are you finding your shops, because most of you guys are working with independents yet, some guys might own a few, but are your shops becoming more and more receptive to new technology to help them be more efficient, faster, quality better? Go ahead, Daryl.
Well, because we talked about capacity issues. So there's still, even though the number of claims are down, there's still capacity, especially in Canada, winter's around the corner, and we run into huge capacity issues. So shops don't really have the ability to expand footprints like maybe they would at one time. There's a lot of reasons. Where they are is very, very expensive per square foot. If they want to go someplace closer to the public, nobody wants them to build. So we have to do more with less. So if you're not moving things quicker through your facility and doing more of the automotive aftermarket generally, you're not going to win. I talked about that expansion into other segments, whether you want to do glass or you want to do mechanical repair service as well, to take advantage of that expensive ADAS calibration equipment you had. Well, that doesn't happen without space. So if you need to increase capacity and you can't increase the footprint, well, things have to move faster, and that's the only way you can do it.
How about your shops, Mike?
So I think that, I think that a lot of shops, as he was saying, is that they've had to move into ADAS. That requires a big space requirement. And so I think, the shops that used to, for convenience sakes, have 2 spray booths may have to look at just having 1. I agree 1,000% with what he said, because ADAS, keeping that in-house versus the cycle time impact if you sublet it out, plus you're trying to keep that labor and that GP in-house. So I think it makes sense. And I'd be quite frank with you, and I mean this respectfully, I don't think most shops are maximizing the capabilities of their single spray booths. And they buy a second spray booth, which I know that takes away sales from you, but that's a big expense, right? For a shop, especially in today's environment. So I think it's trying to figure that out. I can tell you, as a technician, I always wanted to buy my own equipment. If there was something that I felt that was going to make me more efficient as a technician, I would buy it. I didn't expect my owner or manager to buy it. And that was nice if they did, but I was going to buy my own if it made me more efficient. If I was a technician today, body technician, collision tech, I would 1,000% go buy me a handheld Revo. It would make me more productive as a technician, absolutely.
That speaks to something else. I didn't mean to jump in, but if you're struggling to find technicians, if you have one good guy and you can make him even more efficient by giving him the tools he needs and being able to process more work, you're way ahead of the game as well. So there's space, but there's that technician availability piece too.
So, quick question that I have: what kind of space is needed for calibration? So when a shop says, I want to get into that business, what kind of space are we talking about? Because I don't know that a lot of people know how much space is needed.
Yeah, so let's say an average body stall is 300 to 400 square feet. You're talking about, if you're going to do calibrations, you're going to need the 300 to 400 square feet for the vehicle, but then you could need an average of 1,200 square feet in front or behind of the vehicle. Now, if you're doing like a Ford F-150, where the targets are, I believe, don't quote me on this, probably they're 4 feet wide by 40 feet long, then you need a bigger stall. So I think a lot of people are attempting to do calibrations. I shouldn't say a lot. Most people are doing calibrations improperly because the space confinements, right? And it's not just the space size. It's also the right spaces, the floor level, etc. To be honest with you, I think there's a great opportunity for Global GFS to create a calibration room. We have like aluminum rooms, clean rooms. I could actually see like y'all making an environment with an enclosed area just for calibrations that has the right lighting, the floors level, the right kind of, paint on the walls. I 1,000% could see like that taking off in the future.
It's a great idea, and I think the right people from GFS are here to make that happen today. Daryl, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I mirrored that thought, and I like the idea of somebody actually developing the space, because people do invest in the equipment, and then they find out the environment's not right. It could be as little as a bright wide open window in a repair bay can eradicate all of the great equipment you have because it's shining on a target. So yeah. I think it's a pretty clever idea.
Yeah. Obviously, EV vehicles are not going away. Do you feel shops are set up today to be able to properly repair EV vehicles?
I'll tell you, there's some that certainly are. There's always the leading edge, but it's not the fat part of the bell curve, certainly. Lance, I don't know if you're aware, last year Fixed Network undertook a project with Collision Repair Magazine in Canada. We traveled across the country supporting them in what they called the EV Tour. And we had 5 stops across the country over the full course of the year. We invited various stakeholders just to talk about whether it was recycling batteries or how to handle the safety issues around a car. And we invited stakeholders from distribution, from insurance companies, from shop operators, everybody we could think of that was interested. And it was really just to have a conversation. Nobody was selling anything. We were just trying to have it from different perspectives. And every time we had one of these, people walked away amazed at what they didn't know. And these were people that were in the industry. But you'd have a battery recycler that didn't understand some of the concerns of a collision repairer. You'd have a collision repairer that didn't understand the absolute necessity to isolate a damaged vehicle until they knew the conditions of those cells and prevent any runaways that could happen, might not happen, but if it did, is it far enough away from a vehicle beside it? So, we like to think that everybody learns, and there were shops that were certified by manufacturers that were there that didn't realize certain things like, putting a padlock on a battery disconnect. They knew to disconnect the battery. Did they know they had to put a padlock on it to make sure that you didn't walk over later and push it down so that it didn't happen? So these little learnings were very important, but it tells me there's a lot more to talk about and a lot more to be known before this industry is fully ready for it.
Yeah, I agree. Those are great points. Mike?
Yeah, I think in the U.S., when it comes to electric vehicles, I think it's really important that when we're reading anything in the press or hearing something on the news, that we distinguish whether it's a global initiative on behalf of the car manufacturer or a United States initiative. Because when you go to a lot of other countries where fuel prices are hypothetically $8, $9, $10 a gallon, I can see why they want to adopt electric vehicles there so quickly, right? But in the U.S., I believe we know electric vehicles are here. I think it's how quickly do we adapt to them, right? What I would say with that is, do I think shops absolutely can fix those? Because we've got really good training programs, whether it's iCar, you got some of the OEM specific training, and again, you've seen what Rivian and Lucid have done, etc. So I absolutely think the right shops can be equipped and trained properly to do that. Now with that said, obviously there's some space concerns, especially if a vehicle's a total loss. There's a company out there called the Energy Security Agency. You can submit photos to them, ESA. They will do a risk assessment on that vehicle for you to determine what the probability is of a thermal event. And then obviously there's a cost to that, but I found most insurance carriers will pay for that, so you can determine if you need to quarantine that vehicle or not. I would also say this, I think the biggest growth in electric vehicles is going to be in the delivery van space. I know that Global, you guys have a great relationship where you build the higher, taller booths for like the Rivian or the Sprinter vans. If I was a shop here today, and I'm not saying this, I'm not being paid to say this, I'm not being paid to be here, I will absolutely, and I tell all my clients this, if I thought I was going to need a spray booth in the next 3 to 5 years, I would just pull the plug and buy a spray booth now. And I would get one with the capacity for doing the bigger vehicles, because I think you're going to see more growth in that delivery van space. Again, you have Bright Drop where they say you can just remove the panels but paint them off the vehicle, but I think you're going to see Hyundai and Kia get into that space. Obviously, there's other manufacturers. So if I needed a booth in the next 3 to 5 years, I'd pull the plug, buy it now. I would absolutely buy a booth with a bigger roof. I would also make sure I got a fully graded floor. Because again, with electric vehicles, if we're painting more parts off the vehicle, regardless of whether it's EV or not, obviously the bigger the more grates you have. I see a lot of shops that go cheap and they go for the single grate, but I would go with the 3 grates because it's going to make my I can't remember the word I'm looking for, but the area for me to paint paints all the vehicle, right? It's
spray zone.
Thank you, spray zone. It's going to make my spray zone a lot bigger. So again, electric vehicles, I'd go all in on the delivery space vehicles. I would actually equip to do that. I think EV cars, you're going to see it's be kind of segmented. It's also going to be pretty demographic driven.
So we're kind of running out of time. There's one more thing that I really want to hit on, and I want to hit on it because both of you two, we've had these conversations, right? You obviously know Global utilizes Revo, okay, efficiency, speed. We utilize side load. You have some in your shops, you have them in the training center, we put some in your locations. I want you to just touch on where you see the role of the quick lane going, right? Where you're teaching your shops to split their work. My heavy hitters are going to go here, my 1 to 2 panel repairs are going to go here, and we're going to turn this basically into a production zone. So go ahead, Daryll.
It's a great point, and it's even more complex than that in my mind, because the segmentation of that work is a lot to do with the geography and the requirements of OE certifications and the expensive equipment that's required for doing certain things. We have some great shops that are legacies, that are in neighborhoods, that we don't want to lose that service aspect with a customer. But does it make sense to make an additional $500,000 investment in every single one of our shops? We have 575 collision centers in Canada that operate under our banners. Not 575 of those shops are going to be fully equipped for the car of tomorrow, or even the car of today, quite frankly, which in my opinion is the repair of tomorrow. So if we start to segment and look at how can we turn some of those into more quick lane production facilities where we're doing more work, we're side loading, we're doing what I talked about earlier, where it's almost like a bit of a Rubik's Cube to move everything around as quickly as you can, and then take, I don't want to call them train wrecks, but the heavier hits, right? The higher labor hours, the ones that are complex, that require the space requirements of ADAS, that require segment, even sectioning on a new car liner machine or whatever it takes. That maybe is consolidated into a single site where they carry all the OE certification qualifications, and then you do more of the quick lane stuff in those other sections. And that requires to be nimble and flexible, and I believe that's where that type of equipment really comes to play.
Mike, I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Again, when I look at the side load booths, I think of like some of my most efficient shops, right? So Airport Road Auto Body, first independent BMW certified shop in the entire United States, BMW Shop of the Year, and they use your side load, right? And I can tell you that between the processes we implemented in their facility, as well as the utilization of your technology, they actually saw their sales increase from about 600,000 or 700,000 a month in sales to up over $1 million. So I can tell you the proof's in the pudding. But I think too, again, it's about maximizing, capitalizing, whether it's square footage or human skill set, etc. So when I think about some of the best shops I've seen, I think too like K&M in Hickory, North Carolina. Again, John Baker at Wallace Collision in Bristol, Tennessee. I could go on and on. All those shops have segmented their work. The one common thread I see is they've segmented their work. And I think that when you go with a side load, it allows you to transfer that work through their shop a lot quicker because, again, it's all about flow, right? So I can tell you, if anybody wants, they can reach out to me personally. I'll give them, don't take my word on it, I'll give you the names of shops that have implemented it. I'm sure he can in Canada. And I can tell you it's absolutely, what's that saying, is the view worth the climb? And I would say yes, it is.
John, I appreciate you both taking the time out of your day. I know you guys are extremely busy. So real quick, is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, just if you're looking to make this kind of capital equipment investment, just think about, is it a workhorse or is it a pretty girl? Because I go with the workhorse every time. And the ability to really build the flexible system you need, I've never really seen anything like it. And corporately, this project we just worked on recently, it's in Mississauga, Ontario, very, very complex, had a lot of space requirement or challenges, and we've solved the puzzle. It includes high roof height so we can manage it, it includes revo, it includes side loads, so it's all there and we can piece it together as we need.
Great. Mike?
I want to just tell people to really embrace what Booth Connect can bring to the table. And I know there's Revo and other things, but I just think Booth Connect is, you're just scratching the surface right now, right? I think we got to start analyzing what's our average, paint labor hours per booth cycle, tracking our redos so we can utilize, root cause analysis, right, to problem solve. I think we also have to start looking at what is our fuel usage, right? I mean, there's, and what's our cycle time on our booth? Is somebody taking 2 or 3 hours? Well, what are they doing in that booth when we could have been, doing some of that outside the booth? So I'm really excited about the future of Booth Connect with the analytics and how it ties into management systems and labor hours. And again, I'm just a data geek, so I just love it. And I just think it's the way of the future, right? I mean, I could even see a future where AI, or ChatGPT, it'll help you to identify where your areas of opportunity are. So, it's like technology is entered into the welding and frame equipment and estimating, and like the booth, you guys are like the last holdouts on technology. So kudos to y'all for embracing that, right? And I just want to say the other thing, man. This guy is so smooth, man. He's just so smooth the way he talks. I'm sitting over here thinking, this guy is a pro, man. So great job, brother. You're very polished, man. Very polished.
Hey, I want to thank you both for being here. SEMA 2024. Appreciate the partnership. And most importantly, I appreciate the friendship with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Lance.